Hi, and welcome back to part two of our session about connecting at Wake Forest. Again, welcome to Wake. We're very excited to have you here. My name is Betsy Adams. I'm the Assistant Dean for Leadership Initiatives and Fraternity and Sorority Life. So in part one, we talked about a lot of different ways to get involved on campus, student government, student organizations, leadership, et cetera. In this section, we're really going to focus on fraternities and sororities. The reason why we break this up this way is that when we do this in person, I always do a poll with our families to see what are you most interested in learning about? And we have a couple of hands that go up for leadership initiatives and a couple of hands go up for student government. And then I say, and who wants to learn about fraternity and sorority life? And every hand in the room goes up. So this way we can spend a little bit more time focusing on fraternity and sorority life because we know that is what a lot of people have questions about. And thankfully, that is what falls into my area, so I can speak to you about it very well. So, brief overview of our fraternity and sorority community. We have 24 social fraternities and sororities. And so I want to emphasize the social aspect of that and that we need to define what we mean by social. These are talking about the groups who really social development is why they were founded. And they typically use Greek letters in their names. There are a lot of academic honoraries, et cetera, service organizations like Alpha Phi Omega that use Greek letters as their name and may refer to themselves as fraternities. That is not what we're talking about. We are talking about groups that tend to have a more comprehensive focus and really have always been focused on helping their members get ready for their lives post-college. So we have 24 social fraternities and sororities on campus. They're broken into 3 different fraternity and sorority life councils, and I'll explain a little bit about that. The Interfraternity Council is the oldest on our campus, as well as the oldest nationally. These are the men's organizations that started it all. We have our Panhellenic Council, which on our campus is 8 women's organizations. Again, on a national scale, these are the groups that kind of came next. Slightly different history at Wake Forest, but nationally, these are the ones that came next. And then finally, we have our National Panhellenic Council, or what's commonly known as NPHC, which are our historically Black fraternities and sororities, as well as our multicultural sororities. So all of our 24 groups each fall into one of these groups, and it's kind of a leadership bucket that they fit into. A lot of their traditions are the same within each of these councils, et cetera. We do have one of the largest Greek communities in the country. We are hovering between 46 and 47%, so not quite half of the campus. To give you an idea of what that means, it puts us in the top 20 of campuses across the country on percentage of affiliation, not by number of groups, not by sheer number of students, but just by what percentage of the student body is a member of a fraternity or sorority. That breaks down to about 37% of our undergraduate men and about 60% of our undergraduate women. That 60% of undergraduate women puts us in the top 10 for campuses nationally for women who are in a sorority. I do like to emphasize to everybody, though, that, yes, while that is definitely, you can feel the presence of fraternity and sorority life on campus, it still means that over half of our Demon Deacons are finding a sense of belonging and having a great WIG experience without getting involved in fraternity and sorority life. And I do want to also emphasize that when we talk about these numbers, we're talking about where we end the school year. So we have a deferred recruitment campus, which we'll talk a little bit about that more in a second. But we're talking about when our entire campus is eligible to join, how many students actually choose to. This is not a number based on what it looks like in September when freshmen inherently are not allowed to be a part of fraternity and sorority life. This is the actual true interest number that we provide when we talk about these percentages. Some people wonder, why are the men's and women's so different? There are a lot of reasons to that. Recruitment styles are a part of it. I would say, the athletics population looks a little bit different, so that makes a difference. And just general interest in what that looks like. They're both definitely vibrant communities with a lot of interest in them, but it just plays out a little bit differently between men and women. So very quickly, these are our chapters that we have on campus, broken down by council. So if you are interested because you particularly were a member of a certain chapter, or you have another student somewhere that is a member chapter, this is who we have. This is also available on our website. So how to join? You do have to have a 2.5 university grade point average. That is a solid 2.5, and we go out to the 3rd decimal. So a 2.499 is not the same. And that is what you have to actually get as a student in a university. So what they'll have to earn their first semester of their freshman year before they're eligible to join in January. They also have to complete 12 credit hours as a matriculated student. I know most of your students probably took like 12,000 AP or IB classes and are coming in like practically seniors. but it's not quite the same as taking actual college classes. And so while we totally applaud and are proud of the work that they did in high school, this is definitely based on when they are taking college level courses and what they're doing here at Wake. So they do need to get 12 credit hours as a college student before they're able to join. They also have to complete the Fraternity Sorority Life Prevent Zone module. There are 2 Prevent Zone modules. These are both hazing prevention and education modules. There's one that we require all students to take part in as a part of their orientation. It's an online module. They should have already gotten the links to it and be completing that. If not, remind them to do so, please. But there's also a secondary module that company who we have contracted with has created about Fraternity Sorority Life specifically. So we also require them to do that secondary module prior to them joining and registering for a recruitment process. So when does recruitment happen? For our Interfraternity Council, they will be after classes begin in January. They usually do a kickoff either, depending on what day of the week classes begin that year, either the week that classes begin later on like Thursday night, or they'll start it early the next week. For our NPHC organizations, there is not a centralized process for intake. Our Shane Taylor is our assistant director for Fraternity and Sorority Life, and he advises our NPHC council. So we advise everybody to reach out to him if you have specific questions about one of our NPHC organizations. And for our Panhellenic council, historically, those are prior to classes beginning in January. And registration for that will open in October. So students can start looking out for the January registration processes for IFC and Panhellenic. That does start happening in the fall, and it does close in the fall semester as well. Panhellenic usually in October, it will open and then close in mid-November. IFC will typically open in mid-November and close around the last day of classes in December. An additional note on the Panhellenic recruitment. So these are the sororities that is kind of the whole grand brouhaha is what I call it. It's a very highly structured process. It takes up a lot of time, energy, resources for our chapters, for our staff, et cetera, to do this. And we typically do this, again, before classes begin in January. I'm filming this session toward the end of June, and we are actually still evaluating our options because we know that even with vaccinations being up, even with requirements from the university, that the public health best practices and recommendations from the CDC are constantly changing. So at this point, we're still evaluating if we need to do any of these pieces virtually or if we're able to do everything and have the capacity to do everything in person. We had a lot of success with an all virtual recruitment last year. And while I don't anticipate that that is what we're going to be doing, it does open up some opportunities for, does it make sense to do some of this, especially earlier on in a virtual setting, because we actually found that our students were much more relaxed. Our women that participated actually enjoyed the process and felt far less pressure. The conversations were much more genuine. There wasn't focus on things like, oh my God, is my outfit the right thing? Like they were focused on getting to know people. So we do want to continue to capitalize on all the benefits that we saw from that if we can. At this point, when you're probably watching this in August, I would recommend go to the student engagement website to look for the most recent updates, because we are hoping that by the time classes begin, we have finalized the process and our dates for it. Either way, the students are going to have commitments beginning on January 4th, whether those are in person or virtual. I highly recommend don't make any travel arrangements for January until you have checked our website or reached out again to Shane Taylor, who advises the Panhellenic Council, and he'll be able to tell you what the plans are. So don't automatically assume when your students need to be back. Definitely check with our staff about what you should do in terms of travel arrangements. We have been going through an expansion process within our fraternity and sorority community because we have had so much interest and we have the opportunity to bring some great groups to campus. So starting this past spring, we have both Phi Kappa Phi and Psi Sigma Phi multicultural fraternity coming to campus. Phi Kappa Phi is a member of the Interfraternity Council, and Psi Sigma Phi will be an associate member of our NPHC. Psi Sigma Phi is our first multicultural fraternity that we have, which we're very excited about. Basically, both kind of started some recruitment efforts, got some guys who were interested in it. We didn't quite have the full rollout that we had hoped for because of the pandemic, obviously, but we're really excited because they're going to be going full throttle this fall, which means that by the time your student, if your student is a first-year student, is eligible to join in January, they will be up and running with a great group of men already in each of these. If you actually have a transfer students coming to Wake, they could actually consider any of our fraternities or sororities, including Pi Kappa Phi and Psi Sigma Phi, in the fall semester as well. So a lot of students want to know and families want to know, how do we actually start getting to know and meeting fraternities and sororities? We know we can't join till January, but like, how do we meet them and get to know them and start learning about the community? So the involvement fair is a great opportunity to start getting some basic questions answered. We'll have our fraternity and sorority life out ambassadors out there. We don't have all 24 chapters. We used to do that and let every chapter be out there. And I, as a full-time staff member who's been a sorority woman for longer than I'm going to admit right now, would walk out there and I was intimidated by the gauntlet of the 24 chapters. So we realized that was actually not the best way for our first year students to start meeting everybody. But we'll have our ambassadors out there so that your student can ask questions about fraternity and sorority life, learn more about processes, get some student perspective. And that's an awesome group of students and resource for them. And following that, each of those councils will host some specific events. They'll have info sessions, which are more of a nuts and bolts. Here's what to expect. Here's how you register, etc. And they'll also have more open house and get to know us kind of events so that people can specifically meet different people from chapters and start learning about each of them over the course of the fall. So by the time January comes in, they'll feel a little bit more prepared and a little bit more educated on who does what and what are people involved in and kind of what are some of their values. And they can find the group that really matches who your student wants to be and what they want to grow into as a Demon Deacon. We do have two unrecognized organizations that we need to make sure that we talk about. So both Kappa Sigma and Delta Kappa Epsilon, otherwise known as DEAC, have chapters within the Winston-Salem area that are not recognized by Wake Forest University. The situations are slightly different, so I will talk a little bit about each of these. Kappa Sigma was recognized by both the national organization and the university, and then suspended by both in 2014 for a lot of different conduct violations. In fall 2019, we had not yet actually opened for expansion and bringing a new group yet. However, the national organization decided that they were ready to be back at Wake Forest. So they recruited a group of students outside the bounds of our policy and chose to go ahead and recognize that group and charter them as a chapter. Again, they're not affiliated with Wake Forest, but they do have national recognition. Delta Kappa Epsilon is a little bit different. They were actually suspended from the university in fall 2018 after multiple conduct violations mostly involving alcohol violations, but there were some other things in there as well. However, their national organization decided that they were not going to suspend the chapter either, so they continued recognition as well. They are not eligible to return until at the earliest May 2022. And in both instances, whether it's Kappa Sigma or DEAC, they simply can't come to campus. They would have to go through the expansion application process at whatever point Wake Forest actually opened for expansion, which, given that we're bringing two groups to campus right now as it is not something that we are anticipating happening in the near future. So two things to know and understand, particularly if these groups of students are saying, well, we'll be recognized by the campus at a certain time or anything along those lines. We don't have plans at this point for an expansion process that would allow them to apply and participate in that along with whatever other national organizations are participating. The other thing to know about these groups is that because they're not recognized by the university, they do not have all of the benefits of being a student organization. They're not advised through our office. They can't reserve space. They can't participate in campus events. As an organization, individually, if students want to come to a leadership series workshop, or if individually they want to participate and hit the bricks, they can certainly do so. But DEAC and Kappa Sigma cannot have teams at those events. They can't do tailgates, which is very important to our undergraduate students. They don't participate in our recruitment processes, et cetera. So they really don't get the same experience that our recognized fraternities and sororities do. So as you are having these conversations with your students, we really encourage that our Wake Forest students are participating in groups that have both national and university recognition, not a group that is missing one of those. There are not any groups that we recognize that do not have a national affiliation. So really, we're just talking about if a group does not have Wake Forest recognition. So at this point, if you have any questions about anything in part 1 or part 2, we certainly encourage you to reach out to us. Our website is listed here as well as our email address. You can also stop by or send your student to stop by Benson 335 or give our office a call. We're very excited for you to join the Demon Deacon family. We're very excited for your student to join the Deacon Demon family, and we're excited to help them find their place. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll be seeing you soon. Go Deacs!